All right, Harvey. So my glass is empty, and I'm ready for another expression. If you're willing to share.
All right. Well, let's do this 200th anniversary Carches.
All right. This one?
Yeah.
Can I pour? You want me to pour? I'll open it. You pour it. How much am I allowed to have?
However much you want.
Oh, it's always good to know someone, Gina. It's always good to know.
This is my new. I'll say when. I'll say when. Oh, okay. You want me to say when again? When? Fabulous.
Thank you, Harvey.
Wow. Oh my gosh, delicious.
Yeah.
Tell me, I got it to my hand. I got it, Harvey.
So where we were, how I got into whiskey, back in those days, of course, Goldstein had got me in. I was already into cognac, but the problem with cognac was, of course, it's all diluted to 40%, or almost all of it. It was even worse than it is now. Nowadays, you've got a few higher proof cognacs and a few cask strength cognacs that have, like Laphroaig, have come to this country, but they're not here anymore. In fact, Sam's took a shot on them back before Benny's bought Sam's in Chicago, and I haven't seen it marketed here since. It's the cognac of the House of Lords, and it's amazing the difference of it being a cask strength instead of a filtered diluted to 40. I mean, the complexity of the taste is just. I mean, I really, now that I've seen for close to 20 years the cask strength phenomena in the Scotch, I really don't see how anybody drinks stuff at chill filtered to diluted to 40 anymore, because these cask strength versions or high proof versions have so much more in terms of complexity. It's like they're Kool-Aid whiskeys, and these are, the real thing. And it's just, once you experience this and see what the difference is, it's just almost impossible to go back. I mean, maybe if you're on the beach and it's hot and you need to put some ice cubes in your whiskey, it really doesn't matter what you pour in there. But you're going to sit here and drink it and nose it and really get a sense of how good the whiskey can be. You don't want them, finger fucking it or messing with it or whatever. It's just like well. You were going to ask the question?
I was going to ask a question, but then you said finger fucking, and I don't know what to go from there. Let's be honest.
Losing the train of thought.
Let's be honest. I went, at the beach, and then I said Harvey at the beach, and now you said finger fucking, so I'm over it. So whatever. Harvey, I want to say one thing about this. This is so delicious. It's got like an amazing cream to it, and like, why?
Well, that's a special recipe, and Carches means friendship or friends, and it's a special thing that they theoretically have every day for Phase Eel for the Isle Festival. That's the Laphroaig Phase Eel whiskey, and that's another wonderful thing. All the other 7 working distilleries, as well as Jura, they make a special whiskey for the Isle Festival too, but they charge an arm and a leg for it. The Laphroaig, that's under $100. I mean, then it comes on the market. Of course, it doesn't last that long, but once a year, it comes over here, and you can get that bottle for $80, $90.
So basically, what you're saying is, if you find it, buy it.
Yeah, every year there'll be a new one. They're different every year.
Sure.
So that's probably the best one that John Campbell has made of those, and parallel with the 10-year-old cask strength, one that says 200th anniversary is it's just super. But again, it's availability and it's good, and it's reasonably priced. Anyway, back to how I got into it. So he had me drinking all these $400 or $500 cognacs and so forth, and I immediately had to learn to spit as well. So now I don't drink whiskey. I do my sommelier act. I nose it. I get a mouthfeel and I spit. That way I can literally go for, I'm not going to Chicago Whiskey Fest because I have to leave tomorrow, and of course we got my birthday and all that other stuff. So we're not going to Chicago. But if I was up there from tomorrow night till the last Benny's party on Saturday, I would be probably consuming, at least tasting, at least 50 whiskeys every day, and there's just no way I can do that unless I do this. So it's actually one of the things that's kept me doing this. I can now, buy whatever I can afford and taste it, and that way I know virtually everything. Now, there is a big problem, and that is a whole lot of these whiskeys you need to let them breathe for 30 or more minutes to get the best you can out of them. So that decreases the number of things you can taste unless you're very organized, and I'm not always that organized.
I'm not. Although I have to say, Harvey, you really do remind me of a card catalog, like something like if you went to a library.
And you just dated yourself.
And you just fingered through. I did date myself, but you know what?
Yeah.
There's an authenticity to it where like you go in, there's a tactile feel, there's the romance of it, the smell of it, the beauty of it.
Library.
And like whiskey is a library. Whiskey is knowledge, and like the romance of Harvey is for what for my generation of bartender and the younger ones under, and is what it is. It's like, how do you just thumb through years and go, it's 1983, and this was the distiller, and this was the brand, and this is what they made for the aisle, and this is what it was, and this is what it tastes like, and this is how much is left. And when you do that, you just romanticize all of these people that are in this room. And like, what I think sometimes people forget is that every single bottle has a person behind it. Every single bottle has a story. Every single expression, every single barrel, every single thing has somebody that sits there and makes it, holds it, and years pass. And we drink it and consume it, and sometimes you don't realize that those are lives and hands. And I don't know. And I'm honored to be here with you and talking about this. Like, it's an honor. And like,
I'm equally honored. It's kind of like a woman. You like the look of her, and then you like the feel of her, and you like the smell of her, and you like the taste of her. And, kind of like eating pussy, right?
That's right. And that is right. Cheers to that, Harvey. You know what?
Wow.
May all men or women, whatever you factor, like always eating pussy. We're good to that.
So anyway, that got me right about the time of the Cadenhead invaded the country with over 6 or 7 years, close to 200 different expressions. They literally were giving you stuff from all the roughly 100 working distilleries and maybe 20 dead ones, and all at cask strength in those old green bottles. And suddenly, before that, there wasn't any Scotch whiskey. I mean, the classic, the Diageo classic malts had just come, but I mean, these again are all chill filtered and diluted whiskeys, and the Macallan and Glenlivet and maybe Glen Grant and Bowmore and Laphroaig were available in these watered down forms. So you couldn't find out what whiskey was about over here. There weren't any single cask strength stuff for all practical purposes until Cadenhead started to bring it. I mean, Gordon and MacPhail, we were campaigning against them from the early 90s, and it took them till the early 2000s to, it was all, would you please give us a little more whiskey in our water? I mean, they were all chill filtered, diluted to 40 or 43. And then they finally, Andrew Simonson at Signatory, he was one of the first ones that did the unchill filtered diluted to 46 thing, and you started getting all these the word unchill filtered became a big part of the language. Well, that was a whole lot better than the chill filtered and even diluted to the max. And we've really got it to come around to now where we've got a huge number of single cask strength whiskeys independently bottled coming on the market, and of course that's with the Laphroaig 10-year-old cask strength and the Cartridge. I mean, you have a different one every year and so forth. So you get a shot at finding out what the whiskey really tastes like, and it's more affordable. Obviously, it's not as cheap as the ones that have been diluted, so they make a whole lot more money with them. But you still all of these, you have all of these choices, and that's what the beauty of it. I mean, that's the concept that made this bar what it is. The idea is if we give you more choices, you will, if nothing else, you'll come in here to taste them before you go to the liquor store and spend your money on a bottle you don't like, sort of thing. That's one of the angles.
Gina, on that note, when you make a cocktail, you take that into consideration often. I mean, I watch you do it. How is that?
Whatever it is, you honor the spirit that's in the bottle. And like I said, there's so many things that go into every single thing, whether it's, amazing or, mild. It is, it's the beauty of it. But I have to say, I totally agree with Harvey with the cask strengths and being able to taste the distiller's hand, the difference. When you add a lot of water to anything and you bring it to one grade, like it becomes one thing. You can make everything, seem year for year, And Harvey, I just want you to explain a little bit about when you say this is available, once a year. How many bottles is available once a year? Not cases or bottles.
I'd say that somewhere around 16,000 bottles, but I don't know for sure. They don't tell you. I would assume that there's at least 16,000 bottles of that for the world.
Right, for the world, right? So you're talking about, billions of people with 16,000 bottles available.
Any single cask, if it's a North American whiskey, if it's a bourbon, hogshead, or barrel, it's less than 300 bottles for the most part. And if it's a sherry butt, it's maybe twice that. So that's one thing we haven't got into. Again, this revolution has brought out all these single cask things because distillers like Laphroaig sell a huge number of casks to independent bottlers. They may want their marketing to buy the official bottlings, but they're making money off of all this other whiskey. They're selling a whole lot more whiskey as single malts. Rather, when the year 2000, 99% of all single malts were there for one purpose, and that's to feed the blends. In other words, you didn't get to taste them as single malts. You only got them taste them in various blends, which are, if you think other stuff is engineered, obviously the blends are the most engineered thing there is, and of course they're all chill filtered and diluted. So the beauty of what happened, and Laphroaig is one of the distillers that's really responsible for it, is by selling these casks to independent bottlers or letting them go out on the spot market, they obviously get bottled as single malts, so people get to actually taste each one of these casks is different. Really the most important element of the taste profile of any whiskey is the single oak cask it's aged in. They're all different. All the trees are different. All the barrels are treated different and in some way. So you can have, let's say 20 casks that were both distilled on the same day and ultimately bottled on the same day. Let's say 23 years later. Every one of them will taste different because of the character of that cask, and that is what is the major part of the taste profile of the whiskey after, at least a reasonable time in the cask. Not the distillate itself. Obviously, that is a big part, but it's still not the major thing because obviously, logically, if you have the same spirit that goes into 20 different oak casks and every one of them is different, then what's the
variable,
determining difference? The wood.
Yeah, wood.
So that's what has actually made this a good part of what has made this revolution, where there's many more people into the single malts, and you see the same thing happening in North American whiskey and all this boutique-y shit that we've been getting by having more choices. You get more customers. You actually make more interest, if we only had official bottlings up there's no fucking way we'd have 2,800 different whiskey choices up there, because they don't exist. And more than half of those bottles up there are single cask bottlings, and most of them are independently bottled. And that way you can get a real sense of what the taste profile of the distillery is. My basic rule is I don't rate a distillery until I've had at least 10 cask strength versions, hopefully all of them in ex-North American whiskey, ex-bourbon wood, without any finishes, without any fortified wine, cask, sherry, Madeira, port, so forth. I wanted a way to, a format that I can compare them, cask to cask, distillery to distillery, and that's the best way. Then you get it.
Do you think that the cooperage, so can I just ask you this? If you have the same, just like, it's Harvey's World, right? You get one barrel, you get one run off a distill, and then you have, I don't know, let's call it 5 different Coopersmiths that make you, different barrels. Do you think that if you blended the wood in different ways, that you would actually create the better whiskey that way? Like if you could pick one stave for each thing that you think that creates something, how would you come up with it? Would you think that you could pick like 2 pieces of sherry cask, 1 piece of French oak? What would you put?
I understand what you're saying. And another thing
I'm a little drunk, Harvey, so I'm trying to make sure I understand what I'm saying.
You're in trouble.
She's a cheap date these days,
That's right.
Harvey.
She's lying.
They don't know me, Harvey.
Anyway, no, I think that's just fiddlesticks. That's just playing around with stuff to play around with. That first, there's no literature on it, and there can't really be any literature on it because, first of all, that makes it way too complicated. Already the Coopers are not. They don't take one single cask, dismantle it, and wrap it in plastic. And this was cask 8, 2, 3, 4 from Buffalo Trace, and when it gets over to Scotland, they reassemble that cask. No, they do whatever they want to with that wood. Yeah. They age it, they dry it out, they burn it,
But what if it was a perfect world? What if tomorrow, a perfect world, and someone said you could pick some staves that you wanted? Would you pick
you're complicating it in a way that creates an aleatory result for certain. I don't need that. The thing that's important is that it's in a cask. It aged and then it's bottled, and you get to taste the whiskey that came out of that particular cask. The idea of making it into a special thing that tickles your fancy or your imagination is bullshit.
My unicorn.
Unicorn.
Because number one, you can't replicate that, and number two, who is really going? Are you going to put a picture of your barrel with all the stave? Well, this stave was this and that and that and the other. It's like recording everything in life, and well, actually, people ask me about my concoctions. The same thing. What went into that? Well, I don't know. They're fucking incestuous. Every one of them has over 200 different single malts in them, and most of them took well over a year to get to a point where I thought it was something special. It was different. It had things you're supposed to have, like a reasonable nose, a reasonable mouthfeel, and something of finish. One of the problems with half those goddamn single cask bottles, they have very poor finishes or very little finish. So I'm always looking to make. Now I'm making something that's special in the same way as you're doing with your cask, but there's no goddamn way I can tell you what's the proportions of all the different things that went in. There's just too many. And besides, what good would it do? You can't replicate it anyway because they're all dinosaurs within a couple of months after they go on the market.
So basically, each one of his blends is a unique unicorn.
Well, he's talking about this. Talking about the barrel.
Way beyond unique.
They're already extinct after their barrel.
More different expressions in it than any blend ever made. Simply because they're trying to make money. They can't sit around and play with them until they get something that whatever.
They need consistency.
No, I do understand what you're saying. I love it though. I want you to. I want everybody to understand what you're saying because I feel like.
Well, the important thing here is that by their the distiller's selling single cask to the independent bottlers. It gives everybody a shot at not just what the distillery manager in his unique spot can see, because he can taste them all along, that he can learn about the distillery. The actual bottled whiskey is out there in myriad forms in the single cask form, and they're all different, and that gets people so that they can actually get into Laphroaig. I mean, I have literally at least 250 different expressions of Laphroaig. Maybe 40 of them were in our official bottlings. All the rest of them were bottled by Signatory, Gordon and MacPhail, and God knows, I mean, exclusive malts, everybody. I mean, all these independent bottlers. And certainly I must have at least 50 Scotch Malt Whisky Society versions of Laphroaig. All of them at cask strength, and of course, all of them different. So it's that's the way you really get hooked on this stuff, is because, I mean, of course, there are these guys. I mean, they want a whiskey, and they want to put some ice in their rocks glass and pour the whiskey on it and sit back and watch the TV. Well, I mean, that's maybe they just want to get drunk. I don't know. That's not what we are about. We're about, you know, finding out what's in the bottles and what the distillery can do. The whole scope of what it is and how it takes on life. It's not just something you use. It's something like an education, like any other thing in life that you really get obsessed with. My previous obsession was 20th century so-called classical music. When I finally decided to, you know, devote most of my resources to whiskey instead of music, I had maybe 11,000 compact discs. I had listened to all of them. The only way I can find out what a composer can do is to listen to every, you know, possible example of what his work is.
You're a romantic, Harvey.
Well, I don't think of it as romantic. I think of it as finding out what reality is. But it's just a little particular slice of reality.
I don't know. I think if a woman tells you you're romantic, Harvey, you're romantic.
I mean, like you just said, like Scotch.
Whatever Gina says.
No.
Cheers to that, Harvey. I agree with you 100%. Whatever Gina says.
No, I'm empty,
Let's
Harvey.
drink to
We're
that
going to go on the next expression. That's not what I'm saying. But like you saying that you're like into classical music, and then you're talking about these beautiful distilleries
Try
and everything.
That's one of John Campbell's best concoctions. I mean, basically, he's trying to make stuff like that with a...
Just so you know, Harvey's watching exactly how much I'm actually pouring of his.
Well, there's not hardly any left in it.
Is that any more bottles of this, Harvey? Or are we going to
no idea.
I'll take a sip, tiny, like a
You
breath.
should breathe it. Just stop.
Yes.
Just
Anyway,
stop.
that's one of his better inventions of recent time. It's more expensive than this other stuff, but in a lot of ways it's worth it.
Serious? Oh my gosh, the nose on this is amazing.
Anyway, I guess that's really the central thing, is the choice. Today we have, you know, myriad choices that nobody had even 5 years ago, because you've got all these independent bottlers and everybody's competing at a high level, and the demand is apparently pretty high, and everybody's making money, and you're getting more people into it every day. And to me, you know, it's almost not fun. Fun is something you have with other people. This is more like an education that is a continuation play. It never ends, and it's an obsession is what it is.
Your obsession with whiskey. Cheers. I'm okay with that.
Thank you.
I'm okay with. I think.
Yeah, no, we're definitely being schooled today.
What?
We're definitely
Absolutely.
being
I don't even. You know. I feel like this is like
Well, anyway,
It's a good day.
It's a great. It's a
Great
It's
day.
a birthday.
Yeah.
It's a celebration, right?
That's what happened to me. I got to where I can't drink anymore, so I had to find another way to sort of handle my alcoholic obsession, which I turned into, instead of drinking cheap shots and Irish whiskey and just getting drunk or feeling good, I started, you know, getting into what the thing actually was, and basically it was the perfect time, because that's when they decided to invade North America, first with Cadenhead, but then Signatory and Gordon and MacPhail got going pretty good, and it's evolved. We just now have myriad choices where, let's say back in the late 80s, early 90s when it started, I mean, we had nothing. You couldn't find out much of anything. Of course, you had to start somewhere, and they did.
And Cuddy Shark, right? Isn't that enough?
So speaking of choices, Harvey, tell me about how many whiskeys do we have in this locale that we're at?
Well, at most we've had about 2,800, roughly 1,800 single malts, 600 plus North American whiskeys, and 300 plus world whiskeys and blends. So 2,700 and something. We actually went over 2,800 once, but we had actually intended to make this the biggest whiskey bar in the world for my 80th birthday, but they got involved in buying the property down the street to open this other Imperial restaurant, which is really put off this. Bill and I both have in our houses enough whiskey expressions that are not in here to make this the biggest whiskey bar in the world tomorrow. But you have to restructure the place and restructure the whole way of delivering it, because we don't really have enough space to do it the way we do now. Even taking Dram and Grain out of the basement and putting it in the new restaurant Imperial, that'll give us at least a place to taste whiskey that is away from the noise
regulars,
and bullshit.
The regulars?
Well, the noise and bullshit.
commoners?
I mean, come
The
on,
commoners, the pumpers.
it's not that. It's a level of noise. I mean, you come here on a Friday, Saturday, you go up there on the terrace, you can't hear yourself think, much less talk.
But you were 21 once.
Well, that's
You
cool,
were
but-
chasing skirts.
Yeah, but that doesn't have anything
So, I mean,
to do
that's
with
part of a
drinking.
bar, right?
But it doesn't help with drinking whiskey. I mean, here you've got this palace of whiskey, this almost religious
love that.
place of celebrating the
An
whiskey.
altar of whiskey.
There you go, altar of whiskey.
Altar of whiskey. That would be even better,
Then
right?
you don't need to have a volume of what Tom Sietsma says, like 89, it makes you have to talk with raised voice. The fucking level up there is sometimes 140. It's like
It's a good time, though, Harvey. You're just, you know what you're doing upstairs? You're just raising the next connoisseur. You're raising.
That's
no,
true.
because they don't
Upstairs.
have any of that stuff up here. You have to take it out of here and take it up there.
Hold on. You were 21 at a time. You just said that you used to drink cheap Irish whiskey and scotch, right?
course.
So someone up there right now is doing shots, and you know what? In 60 plus years,
There's
he
gonna
might
be a new
be you.
Harvey.
Might be you. You should be up there with a camera, being like, "Who is that person drinking all that scotch?"
No, I'll let them come to it the same way I did. Yeah,
That's
I
right.
don't have to take it to them.
It's a calling, right? If we're gonna call it an altar, can we call it a calling? Can we call
That's absolutely, you can't.
First you got to get them hooked, and then they'll take care of itself.
I think that's a good thing. So Harvey, I have a question for you.
All right.
Do you feel that making cocktails with scotch is bastardizing the situation or making it better? Or either or?
I'll let you judge for yourself.
No, you tell me.
I call what you do making sissy drinks.
Oh.
And you know what I love about that, Harvey?
And I don't basically, even the Ricky contest, at most I'm going to taste
We need to tell everybody what Ricky contest is. So in Washington, D.C.,
I'm
we have
going
one
to
contest.
taste 2 or 3 of them of the people I like and want to win
Am I
that
one of
are
those
my
Harvey?
people. Of course.
Will you taste my cocktail?
Of course.
Can we make you one drink with Laphroaig?
Well,
On your
I'll
80th
definitely taste
birthday?
it. Sure.
All right.
I want to tell you that I don't really have a lot of fear of making anybody a drink, but I knew that this was going to be the toughest call I had. So I started with something that I just knew that had like enough peat and something a little bit different. So this is a.
You're actually going to put that in the
I
cocktail.
want you to taste. No, I want you to smell it. Just smell it. Just smell it. That's all I want you to do. So
Where does this peat come from?
it's actually not peat. It is tea from China, and it's a Laphroaig, and it's.
Yeah, it doesn't
just-
smell like peat.
I know, Harvey. I'm afraid. I'm telling you right now. I'm making the cocktail because I'm a little bit afraid.
You know, Harvey, I love the fact that you're putting
Pressure?
Yeah, putting a little pressure, putting a little sweat on Gina's brow. I think that's a good thing. I don't see it very often.
That's
so
true.
thank you.
That's just part of her her chat up, her.
My chat up or my charm? Do you think I'm really afraid, Harvey? Or do you think I just a
I
setup?
think you have as much charm as any bartender I ever knew.
Wow. Whose birthday is it now?
I mean,
that's a gift in
honestly,
itself.
You know, I gotta tell you, there's a couple of lovely ladies that I know that Harvey loves, so I will go with thank you. So we're putting a little bit of lemon with this, and we're gonna use 2 ounces of Laphroaig. I'm making 3 cocktails. So in this concoction, it's a little bit of the tea, and it's been steeped with orange peel, a little bit of sugar, and then a Mexican cinnamon. And we're going to use a half an ounce for each cocktail. We're making 3. So it's not exactly proportionate for what I'm showing
You're
you.
going to put the regular 10-year-old Laphroaig in there?
I am.
Well, while you're doing that, I'll tell you something about.
Tell me about it.
I'm not sure that's.
Can I shake for a second?
Sure.
Okay, go.
I'm not sure John Campbell or who's the parent company now, Jim Beam,
Yes.
Yep.
will like this story, but it's still cute, and I think it says something to potential whiskey drinkers. For many, many years, until you hear Laphroaig is that, acrid, seaweedy, coastal, iodine, all these, shall we say, sharp and at least borderline unpleasant taste. It's a love it or hate it whiskey. Well, I never really thought of this until maybe about 15 years ago, when basically I got hooked on these previous 10-year-old cask strength things before Campbell came along, Henderson's concoctions, and it suddenly occurred to me the reason it's got all these, shall we say, coastal qualities in the extreme is because they've taken the heart, the sweetness out of it. That's why this is so much better. It's not just more complex, it has all the goodies that come in the Laphroaig distilled intact. What you do is you take all the goodies out and then you get that.
Harvey, you have to explain to Louise, though, hearts and heads. She
Yes.
the hearts, heads, tails of the whiskey, because when he's saying they take the heart out of it, they're losing the beauty of it. So the head comes, the heart's what's delicious, and then the tail's the next. It's like the tail of the buck.
She can either Google it or you can tell her about it.
Well, I'm just telling you.
I don't get into
For my
technical
birthday
distillery
boy,
talk
for my
anymore.
birthday boy, for my lady, we'll put it in there. Yeah.
Thank you, lovely.
So here's the deal. Well, first of all, I'm going to touch Louise's ice.
That's
and
okay.
I can't find my tongs. Hold on, I'm going to do it officially. Ready? I'm going to tong out your ice. All right, now I'm going to hand it. We're done.
There we go.
Too much whiskey, everybody. There we go.
So tell us what we have in here, Gina.
So it's basically a whiskey highball.
Oh,
'Cause
nice.
I couldn't bring myself to bastardize the whiskey anymore. So it's a little bit of lemon, the tea.
Cheers. Thank
And
you.
basically, if we were at the beach, Harvey, hopefully you'll be drinking these.
It's okay.
In your swim trunks, it'd be perfect.
Hold on, Harvey. What did you say?
I said it's okay.
It's not shit.
I said it's okay.
All right, I'll take it. Because I'll tell you right now, I've heard you tell a lot of people that drink is shit. So, I mean, okay means excellent.
It's a high bar, Gina. You did a great job.
You know how afraid I am to make that? I told you,
Oh,
I am afraid to make this man drink. But I know I'm not afraid of this man.
As well, I'm going to say that it's quite delicious. I could easily see drinking this on a really nice hot day.
Well, I think what would be interesting is that if you use the cask strength instead of the chill filtered.
Well, you know what? You know what, Harvey?
Next time.
Whatever, Harvey. You know what? Let's put an extra shot on top and float it. You want to try that?
Well, we'll just
Which one?
empty a little bit of it out and put a little like
I
a
know.
half ounce of
I'm
that
asking
in.
you. Let's make a new concoction. How
Exactly.
much? Half an ounce or
Half an ounce is
Half an
probably
ounce?
more than enough to
I'm in.
give it
Hold
a
on.
little more
Half an
of a
ounce.
Laphroaig taste profile.
I'm into it. I'm into this.
Let's see what happens.
I'm going to call this the fry
Harvey,
method.
you are by many definitions or many reasons why Icon fits you. If nothing more, is that you give Gina direction, and I'm going to tell you, I love it. Love it.
I think you guys are missing what's happening right now. We just
No,
became
it's
the fry
great.
method. So
There you
the
go.
fry method is
This is the fry
if
method.
It sucks.
Whoop.
If it sucks, you add more.
There you
of
go.
something that's cash strength, and then it's going to get better. So I think fry
Let me
method
have
is
your
the thing.
stirring stick.
Okay. Did you just call it a stirring stick, Harvey? Oh wait. Did you just call it a stirring stick?
It is. It's
I
a
am
stick
going
that's
to literally rename all my bar tools based on your idea of what
Why
it should
not?
call.
Well, I think it's better now. It definitely is.
I'm going to be honest with you, it is better now.
Cheers.
How much do I charge for that now? That it's really cash strength whiskey.
whatever they'll pay.
2 zones, folks. It's 2
Two
zone
zone.
cocktail.
There you go. Two zone. There you go. Absolutely.
So, but I let's stop using the things like icon and shit. I mean, I'm just what I am. I mean, I hate all this media way of categorizing everything and having these. Everybody's a hero now. Everybody's an icon. The terms have lost their meaning because they use them to get attention for almost anything that they want to put in front of you. So, don't call me an icon. I'm just.
So I too can be schooled on the same episode.
You know what, Harvey? You put your lifetime into something.
An icon is somebody that's dead. Okay.
Okay.
I called you a living legend right off the bat.
You're not Harvey.
Living legend. How's
Harvey's
that?
just a bar fly, and that's what we're gonna call him from now on, and that's it.
Oh,
Harvey's a
bar
very-
fry.
a bar
fry. You like that?
So anyway, let's get to some of this story done. The Cadenhead was really the first thing where you got over here without going to the UK. Now I've been to the UK many times, and to a good number of the distilleries. Of course, I do really think to a certain extent you go to one, you've gone to all of them. But there are a few that are more interesting than others, and Laphroaig's one of them. The whole point was that they started giving us choices over here, and it's just really multiplied and multiplied. It's multiplied exponentially from what it is, and that's really what is, in my opinion, led to this huge resurgence. This huge, I mean, back in the day, whiskey was it was really a boom bust thing. Well, we've had an extended boom, and it doesn't look like it's going to slow down any time. Especially when theoretically they better penetrate the market in places like China. It's going to go on for a long time. Unfortunately, that results in higher prices in general so far.
And fakes.
Well, fakes are something you don't worry about unless you're collecting things that you're not going to drink anyway. So, I mean,
that's true.
Who's going to pay $2,000 for a bottle of whiskey and open it and drink it? I mean, even I can't afford that. I first tasted the 32-year-old Laphroaig at a whiskey fest in New York when it came out, and Simon was there. We had a room where we were connected with John Campbell in Scotland. It was a simultaneous telecast thing, and I think some other place in the world as well. And I thought it was pretty damn good, and but for $1,200, I wasn't going to buy it. I mean, I've never paid that much for a whiskey in my life, except one time. I buy them cheap, and then they.
Wait, what was that word you used? A cheap motherfucker, right?
They grow in value, so to speak. But I did get a bottle of 32-year-old because I had all these old Macallans, these 18-year-olds and 25-year-olds, chill filled and diluted, that I traded to this a Sikh friend who's also a whiskey collector, and he's really into these chill filtered diluted old Macallan. I'm trying to get rid of all that crap. So bottles that I paid $50 or $60 for back in the day in the late 90s, 18-year-old chill filter diluted Macallans. I got a value of about $800 for them. We just translate that into the $1,200 that the Laphroaig is worth, and so for in effect a bottle and a half of 18-year-old Macallan for in effect less than $100, I got a 32-year-old Laphroaig. You were talking about slick, and and hustling. Well, that's
I
That
told
is
you.
the hustle. That's what
Whiskey
that's the great
Hustler. Honestly, that's all we should be doing, Harvey. Is just
Hashtag.
making sure. Yeah, seriously. Hashtag, shirt, whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Modern times, whatever. Harvey has like literally hustled the fucking game.
Harvey needs merch.
Yes, Harvey's merch. Harvey, can you just imagine? Let's
merch.
do it.
what time is it?
I don't know.
I
What
think
ti-
it is
what
time for us to wrap.
Yeah, I think
Harvey's pulled out his
Unfortunately,
phone.
it's time. It's time to wrap, Gina. So Harvey,
we got a bar to run here.
we
so they
do.
gotta
We do.
fill up.
It's business time. So we need to wrap up here at Jack Rose, who is
Sorry.
a great host, by the way. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So as we close this, let's say thank you very much. We are honored with your presence and happy fucking birthday.
Thank you very much.
Happy
Cheers.
birthday, Harvey.
Cheers.
Cheers, cheers, cheers. Thank you.